All right, we are recording right now. Welcome to PacWest Bigfoot. This is David Boozer. You can see my ugly mug sitting there on the screen. We're not going to be running videos on this one first and foremost because it was actually creating kind of a delay in sound due to internet service providers on both sides here. So there you go. There's that. Actually, here is the deal, guys. This is the very first interview of a couple Bigfoot encounters of a person named Mark that I have gotten to know recently and befriended, and we both have this huge affinity, I believe, for the whole subject surrounding Bigfoot. And I also wanted to let you guys know that basically, in a nutshell, the whole PacWest Bigfoots, the blog itself is sharing a lot of encounters and experiences that I get from a lot of people around the Pacific Northwest. However, here on this live show, kind of the podcast here, the video cast, I am going to be interviewing people from all over North America and Canada, period. So I'll be interviewing people from everywhere. So that is how that's going to run. Of course, your favorite, Pacific Northwest stuff will be found on the blog and up on the YouTube channel. But here on the video cast and the podcast, I'm going to go ahead and share interesting account stories from people around North America. So that is that right now. What I want to do is bring Mark in here. Mark, you there?
Yes, David.
All right. So Mark has a couple interesting accounts, and he's going to go ahead and start sharing that with us, both of those. And then right towards the end, when he is done there, I'm going to kind of have a few questions for him and whatnot. We'll banter back and forth a little bit about the subject matter and his encounters before we wrap up the end of the interview. But wanted to welcome you here, Mark. Thank you so very much, man, for being the first one on here. This is awesome. I've never really done this. I've been the interviewee a few times, with William Jevning and Matthew Loomis, and actually I've got a spot coming up on Paranormal Radio pretty soon here, and some others. But just want to say thank you so very much, man, and I'm going to try to do my best with this interview. But for the most part, I just want to hear your story. I want to hear your accounts, your experiences of what happened to you on both occasions. But first and foremost, what I want to know is, where did both of these encounters and experiences happen?
I was born in Virginia, but moved to Utah with my mother and my brother and sister when I was about 7. So my first one was here in Utah, and then my second one was while I was a young soldier stationed at Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Awesome. So the other thing is, did you know anything about Bigfoot beforehand?
Kind of. I was kind of a strange kid. I liked all the old monster movies, Lon Chaney Jr.
Oh, yeah.
Bela Lugosi. Yeah, and I remember they put out that. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen the film. It's that super, super old one about Sasquatch where it's almost like a Disney nature film. But they go out into Canada.
That sounds really familiar. I might have to check out YouTube and see if we can find some sort of old archived video of that somewhere. That would be
it's there. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it since I was young, and I looked, and it was there.
Oh, the first time I remember, it was like 1978. Star Wars came out. Chewbacca was there. And that was the first time. And I'm from the Pacific Northwest, but earlier, the earliest I can recall of even thinking about the subject of Bigfoot was right about then. And I had asked my dad, I was like, man, that thing is just big and hairy. And he was like, you think that's big and hairy? You should see a Bigfoot. And that's kind of when I was introduced to the whole subject matter of Bigfoot. So if you want to, let's go ahead and get into the first encounter, and then you can bring us right into the second. We're all going to kind of kick back and listen to you for just a little bit here.
Okay. Excuse me. I'm 50 now, and I forget how old you are the first year of middle school. I don't even know if you folks have middle school out there, but I think it's around 10 or 11.
Yeah, somewhere right around there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here in Utah and probably out there as well. If you have a note during deer hunting season, you can go with your dad for a week and get out of school. And I love venison anyway, so I was all awesome to that. I was really, really excited about it, and even was able to bring a friend along with me. And let's see, I went with my stepdad and my uncle, and gosh, I don't know if you want kind of some topography of Utah or not, but
That would actually
where I,
be great, kind of an idea of where you were at, what the location was like. That'd be
yeah,
great.
I won't say exactly, but I live in Utah County, but where we hunted at the time was in San Pete County, and we're talking the rock. I live next, literally on the side of the Rocky Mountains, right at the foot of it, kind of up on the bench. So I'm like 12,000, 13,000 feet above sea level just in my home. And we drove up Spanish Fork Canyon to get to our hunting area, which from my house in Utah County through the four-wheel drive Jeep trail, was, I'm guessing, a good 7,500 or so miles. And this was a pretty remote area. That's hard to say today about anywhere being remote. But no cell phones, as you know, back then or anything. And we parked, and at the bottom of a draw, a pretty small draw comparatively to some. And my dad and my uncle told me, my friend John, that they were going to hike up to the top of the draw, and they wanted us to come up the right side, and this would be going east. We would be heading east up the draw to kind of push the deer, beat the bush for the deer to push it to them, and they would shoot at whatever came from the left side of the draw and up the middle. And they wanted us on the middle of the right side of the draw, or ravine, some people might call it. So they took off, and they told us to give it about an hour and a half. I had a 22 pistol on my hip and a big fixed blade knife on my other hip, and my friend didn't even have a knife. So I gave him my knife just so he could feel, I don't know, cooler. And we started up this trail. We're just talking. They told us to make a lot of noise and toss the occasional rock down into the bottom, which we kind of did, just kind of not even aiming or anything, just winging it out there. I don't really know how far we got up that, but I thought I was hearing something above us towards the top of the ridge in this draw. Mm-hmm. And I was asking John, can you hear that? And we would stop, and then you couldn't hear anything at all, not a sound. And we'd sit there and listen for a minute. I say, just listen for a minute. And he couldn't hear anything either. So we'd start walking again. And we started talking. We did this about 2 or 3 times. And then I was like, let's start walking, but don't talk. And I kind of forgot about dropping the rocks. I literally thought it was my dad and my uncle kind of messing with us. They were going to scare us or something. Mm-hmm. So we start to walk, and we can hear something. You couldn't see it through the trees. Now, deer hunting season here, the rifle hunt, is October. And maybe a skiff of snow occasionally up as high as we were, and some cold wind, but not a lot of green stuff hanging around. And you would think you could see through the pine trees. And that's kind of what the topography is super, super thick forest with pine trees. And quaking aspens. I don't know if you have those in Oregon or not. Do you have those trees there?
No, not a lot. No.
Okay. Well, hopefully somebody's familiar with what they're called. Mm-hmm. And so you can't really see, but you could certainly hear that something was pacing us, because you could hear sticks cracking just like we were doing. Mm-hmm. But it was kind of, I guess you would say, pacing us. I mean, I don't know the word to call it then because I was so young. But, hindsight, and having gone over this in my head for many, many, many years after this And my second one, it's a wow. Well, because you've had your own.
Mm.
That gosh, you become addicted to it. You have to know more. But anyway, we started going more, and the next thing I know, pine cones started being chucked at us. And again, I thought it was my dad and my Uncle Terry. So I'm like hollering back up there, hey, knock it off. And then some smaller rocks, because there's cliffs, there's all kinds of loose rocks that you could bend down and pick up if you chose to,
Mm.
or even boulder if you could pick it up. I mean, interspersed all through this forest. And this is literally a small draw on top of a mountain, because the mountains just kind of go one after another. So they're all kind of connected. And we started going some more, and I'm hollering at them and telling them to knock it off. They're not scaring us. And the rocks started coming. And I would say the biggest ones that you could see, they never hit us, not once, not even with a pine cone. Maybe baseball sized, Little League Baseball or Major League Baseball sized was maybe the biggest that I could see. You could hear those snapping through the trees, as they hit limbs, or the occasional dead leaf hanging there on the quaking aspens and snap off a limb or something. And then this great big old log. I'll bet you combined it was probably as tall as we were, that young anyway. And around it was dead, rotted, water soaked from Lord knows how many winter seasons and rains. I would have guessed it weighing now in hindsight 50, 75 pounds. And this thing was end over end, so that it almost sounded like helicopter blades starting to get a little bit faster, making that whoop, whoop, whoop sound.
Mm-hmm.
And then that right there, besides the rocks, that scared us. And my friend was really freaking out. John was really, really freaking out. And I was too inside, but you just try to kind of, I don't know, hold it together or whatever. And we were both screaming at him at this point, knock it off, you're going to hurt us. And I even hollered, if you throw something again, I'm going to shoot around up there by you from my 22 pistol on my side. If they wanted to play games, we'll play games. I didn't know what else to do. I thought I'd scare them back. I certainly would have never shot in their direction, but it was kind of an hollow threat. And the stuff kept coming. No logs that big anymore, but the pine cones started again, and the rocks, and then things would get dead quiet for a minute, and you couldn't hear anything, no sound, and we're whispering to each other below our breath as low as we can. And John's like, what do you want to do? And I said, well, if they're going to keep crap up, I'm going to go clear the top of the draw. I don't find it funny at all. I thought we were hunting deer. And I guess we were maybe halfway up to where we were supposed to actually wind up meeting them at. And we'd heard no rifle shots at this time. And then trying to remember how the order went. I think I heard almost like maybe it was a little growl or a snort, because it didn't match what I'll tell you from my second encounter. I was growled at pretty good in that one. I know some more rocks came and stuff, and yeah, it had to be a grunt, or must have been a low growl, because I was trying to distinguish whether it was a buck snorting or that's the only thing I thought in my head it could have been, I guess. Bigfoot certainly was not on my mind whatsoever. I kind of lumped that movie in that I had saw with all the others, the Wolfman, Frankenstein. Didn't think it was real. I just remember it scared me to death, as young as I was when I saw it. So then kind of a low, almost like it was going to start to yell, but it wasn't what a lot of people I hear online are talking about, that it started out like a woman screaming and then went into this super low thing. That's not what we heard. What we heard started low and started to get loud and turned around and ran pell-mell down to the bottom of the ravine where there was like a tree from the top down it. And then we cut to the right at the bottom where we had parked at the bottom of this small meadow that was there.
Are you still there?
In my head, it was still them scaring the living crap out of us. So we're zigzagging back and forth. I remember seeing in this soft, super cold, squishy mud, your boots would sink maybe, I'd guess, an inch into it. I remember seeing what looked like barefoot human tracks, but they were super deep, and I thought that was odd. And I thought, why would they take their boots off to scare us? That didn't make a lot of sense to me. And still, I wasn't thinking about Bigfoot, because even in that movie, they talk about, it's almost kind of a documentary type movie for back then, because they show that logging company where the first footprints were found around the D9 cat and stuff, before Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin. And so I had this in my head, and I didn't know if John saw him or not at that point. And we get back down to the Jeep, which was just a soft top, and we hopped in it and shut the little doors, and I started honking the horn for all I was worth. They had the keys, but you could just honk the horn. It wasn't like today's cars that the power had to be on or anything. And I don't remember how much time passed, but nothing came out of those trees. Nothing was thrown at the vehicle. But I guess it was quite a while, because they had to hike from the top all the way down. And they were pretty angry at us because no deer came their way. And in hindsight, I guess if that thing was roaming around there, probably good reason why there was no deer around there, but we never pushed any further on, if we even made it halfway. And they're pretty angry with us. And my jaw was just kind of dropped, and I was really confused. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You were messing with us the whole way we were trying to get up there. You weren't even up that far. And they kept swearing that they were. So we told them what happened, and they tried telling us maybe it was a bear or something. And I told them about the gigantic big prints in the mud. And they're like, no, what's that?
And the pine cones and things being
thrown. Yes, and the pine cones and the rocks and the log. I said, you threw rocks at us, pine cones, you chucked a log at us. And they're like, no, we didn't. He was getting pretty mad at me. And then I started to feel like I was in trouble and I'd done something wrong. And I tried telling him about the footprints. And he's like, you didn't see any footprints. They're probably bear tracks. Nobody's out here running around barefoot. And to this very day, he's in the process of passing from colon cancer, but he still insists that it had to be, a bear or something. But we got back to middle school after the deer hunt and informed our science teacher of this. Well, apparently he must have known a whole lot more about the creature than I did, because he asked for our parents' phone number, and we gave it to him. And he asked if we were willing, if he could get permission from our parents to go back up there and check it out. And I could show him where we saw the big footprints. So this was all arranged, I don't remember, over a week and a half or something. And we did it on a weekend. And we went up with our science teacher, Mr. Hale, back up to that place. He bought us lunch and everything. And he brought some plaster. The stuff that takes 100 years to dry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And took him back up there, and he made, I don't remember how many casts, but I saw him bring out a tape measure and stuff, and he was measuring before he mixing the plaster and poured it in there. And then he said, well, we're going to do a show and tell, and we want you to tell your story when we get back. So this is what we do, and he's having us each hold up a cast, and then we pass it around the classroom and telling them, but they turned out from what I remember, 16 inches. Yeah, and 16 inches, but if I'm trying to remember how wide they were at the top, 6.5, close to 7. But had I known now had I known then what I know now, I would have insisted on at least keeping one of those casts.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've got several now because once the bug got in me, as I got older, I wanted to know what had happened. I guess as I got older, and it really traumatized me being that young. And the older I got, I had to know what messed with me because logically I was thinking, wait a minute, a deer can't throw things. They said they didn't do it. A bear can't throw things. They don't have a thumb, an
Mm-hmm.
opposable thumb. So it had to be someone messing with this or this creature discussing with the science teacher. By that time, I was remembering the movie and stuff and putting it together. Had to be Sasquatch, Bigfoot, boogers. And yeah, that was pretty much the first one. So that things didn't go much farther there because I was so young. I get married, go on through life, and I enlist in the Army at the age of 17, and I'm married
Mm-hmm.
to my wife, who was 19, met her in high school, and my mom signed to get me into the Army and to get married because I was only 17. I'd only been 17 for 2 weeks when I joined and got married. And after training, basic training, I did at Fort Knox, Kentucky, and then artillery, I went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And after training and everything there, I went to Germany for a little while, came back to the States, and I wound up getting stationed at Fort Sill again. So I eventually moved my family there because I was there for 2 years. But we went out to the field for a couple of weeks, and that's where you take your artillery pieces out there in the boonies on the post. And it's really hard to explain. I know Will would know because he was in the Army as well.
Yeah.
It's hard
My
for
son
people
was
to
in the
grasp.
Army, and I have a cousin who just actually retired out of there. So yeah, he's told me about that stuff.
Yeah, well, they're huge. Army military posts are huge.
Mm-hmm.
They're like a country unto itself, so to speak. So they're remote for on the post, and there has to be enough room because these artillery pieces can hit a garbage can 13 miles away.
Mm-hmm.
So you know it's pretty out in the boonies for Oklahoma. And all the artillery pieces, these are self-propelled. So in other words, they're almost like tanks, but way bigger rounds. 155 and then the 8. And it's me and another man pulled field guard duty.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a GP medium tent. It's a big canvas tent with a wood stove. Again, the winter, Oklahoma was like Kentucky in the winter. It was very, very cold. Skips of snow, but nothing like here. Like right now in Utah, I've got 1.5 feet in my yard of snow, and it's pounding snow right now. So those places weren't like that. But we're pulling field guard, and we would start in the middle of these artillery pieces, and he would go to the west, I would go to the east, or vice versa, and we'd rotate our shifts, and everybody's tents are pitched and stuff, but no one's there but us. They're all back in the barracks because they weren't coming out till the next day. They came out that day, set everything up, and then they go back because this is training right now. So they don't bring any of the trainees out there until the actual day of shooting to train them on these artillery pieces. So he heads to the west, and I head towards the east. And there's no fight. You can't have fires, nothing. You got those crappy military flashlights that are kind of a 90-degree angle on the top, so that the lens, the flashlight goes straight up, but the lens angle is permanently angled out at a 90 degree, so it faces forward. Mm-hmm. So you can have it hooked to your web gear, and you could turn it on, and it would shine out in front of you, so you didn't have to hold it with your hand. Yeah. And I've got my M16 with a grenade launcher on the bottom, and they don't give you live rounds here in America unless you're on the shooting range. So all we had were blanks. Mm-hmm. Which was a little distressing once this encounter starts. And I'm going through the artillery pieces and through the campground on that side, all the tents, making sure nobody's messing around because it was an open post. So civilians could drive on the post, and wasn't too out of the ordinary for drunks to be out there on the weekend driving out on the roads, the dirt roads and stuff, even though it's a firing range. And that's another reason why they had you out there, to chase people away so they wouldn't get killed if somebody was doing night fire. And I'm about the second from the last artillery piece, and I heard a low growl. And I thought, man, is that a coyote or something? Because the coyotes were all over the post. Again, Bigfoot is nowhere in my head. I'm in the Army. There's no Bigfoot on Fort Sill, Oklahoma. It didn't even consider that at the time. And then I started walking a little bit forward. I was going to cap off some rounds of my blanks and scare the dog away. So I want to get attacked by some rabid coyote. And as I got towards the front of the piece, you know, your eyes are adjusted. I'm pretty sure it was a half moon, no clouds. So it wasn't like super bright. And there were trees where the tents were all set up and stuff, but not where the artillery pieces were facing downrange. And I see this dark shape in front of it. And I literally think it's the other guy at first. But as I take a couple more steps in this really low level light, I start to see the shape keeps going up and up. And I'm only 5'8" anyway. Everyone's taller than me. So I kind of start to glance up, and I would guess this one would have been. It growled so low and deep. It was like my bones vibrated in my chest, and I feel my M16 vibrate. The plastic foreguard and the metal, I could feel it almost hum.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me, Mark? Sorry to break in.
So, are you there?
I'm here. Sorry about that. My connection was lost for just a moment.
Okay.
It's still recording, I believe. So I don't think we missed out on anything. But could you kind of go back right to where you were talking about the coyotes, the coyote there, and I think you were about to shoot off some rounds or something.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The first growl, instantly I thought, oh, it's a coyote. Dang, I was going to cap off some rounds, chase it out, because I didn't want to get bit by some rabid coyote and torn apart. Plus, I had the other field guard to consider. So I flick off my selector switch from safe to semi, and then a second growl happened as the shape has materialized, and my eyes traveled up, had to be about 7.5, 8 feet. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I couldn't take a tape measure out there the next day or anything, but the gun tubes are in about a 45-degree elevated position anyway, which would have put them, I'm guessing, 10 feet or better at the very end of the gun tube. And this thing was not underneath it, but beside it. And I remember, you know, the next day thinking about it and everything, keeping my mouth shut, and this running through my head. I was playing it over in my head, and it looked to me like there was about 2 feet, maybe a little more, between the end of the barrel and the creature that was next to it. So I started talking to it, and I'm sure my voice was quaking. I was saying, hey, please don't hurt me. I don't want any trouble. I'm just going to go away. And I was mulling all this over in my head, knowing I didn't have any live ammo. Would the round scare it away, or you know, the blanks, or would it just piss it off more? And I said, I don't want to be hurt. I'm just going to go away. Please don't hurt me. So I started backing up very, very slowly. My finger was still on the trigger. You know, if worst came to worst, I was going to pull the trigger and run, turn and run. Mm-hmm. shooting it the whole time I ran, hoping it would scare it away and buy me some time, if nothing else. Not knowing about their speed at that time or anything else. And I can't remember how long I walked backwards, but I remember I bumped into a fire barrel, which they would light the next morning for guys to get their hands warm at. Couldn't have fire at night, but you could in the day. That was weird to me. Well, at night it would give away your position. So anyway, for whatever reason, I don't know if it went around me or paced me outside me, because for all intents and purposes, those sections of howitzers, artillery pieces, they were in almost a really spread out U. So it was almost kind of like a natural fence. And at that point, when I bumped into the barrel, scared the living crap out of me, I thought it was behind me for a split second, and I just bumped into it. I'm terrified, just terrified. I'm sweating, and it's freezing cold out there. And I turn around, and I see what I bumped into, because it made kind of that bung, that clank sound, only kind of dull. So I turn around, and I can start to see the shape of the tent, the charge of quarters tent. So I kind of look around me best that I can in the low moonlight that there was, and I started heading for it. They train you to walk with a 30-inch step constantly, anywhere you go. So it's almost kind of a fast walk. I started with that, and then I bet I trotted, I don't know, a little teeny bit. And I get there and I flip the flap back, and there's no one in there. So everything starts racing through my mind. I have all kinds of horrible things. Gosh, did it get him? Because he wasn't in there. And I never made it to the very end piece, which probably would have been about 100 more yards to get to the other side of the last artillery piece, and, from where I had this encounter. And there's 6 guns on each side of the firing vector. And I didn't want to head out where he went, because, to be quite frank and honest, I didn't want to run into it again. I mean, I was starting to panic. We have a field radio right there, because you're supposed to check in every hour on the hour to the rear, back to where the barracks are. You give a report every single hour, and you trade off. And the whole idea is you sleep for an hour, and then you're up for an hour, and then you rotate with the walk in the shifts. And he eventually came back into the tent. I don't even remember how much time it was. And I told him what happened. And I asked him if he ran into anything or anybody, and he said no. He said, "You're crazy." And I said, "I'm not crazy." And then as soon as he said that, I even thought about telling him what happened to me when I was young. It's kind of like validation. Yeah. Like, I know what I'm talking about. It happened once before. And I was mulling it over in my head. I was the senior rank. He was a PFC, and I was a private first class, and I was a corporal. So I was getting ready to make the radio call to CQ in the rear of the barracks. And I thought, you're supposed to report everything, because if they find out that you left the tiniest little thing out, they berate you and punish you with push-ups and everything else. And it's like they always knew if you were slipping up. You couldn't hide anything from them. But after he called me crazy, I didn't tell him about what happened here in Utah. And I did not add that encounter into the report, because who would believe me? A little bit older, a little bit wiser, and I already know how my dad and my uncle treated us and how they laughed at us. And, it's I'm sure from your own encounter that's the worst thing for folks that have had encounters, is the pathetic bullying and ridiculing that happens.
Yeah.
And because of these 2 encounters, I have, over 25 plus years done researching here in Utah. I have my own plaster casts, pictures of them, measurements, and some recordings. I've never had another sighting, but plenty of prints and sounds. And I was going to start this spring for the first time ever. I don't know how to do it yet, to make a channel and start presenting this evidence that I have.
Oh, that would be awesome. No, I can help you with that myself. Like I said, the whole subject of Bigfoot for me has just been a passion, just been something that I really enjoyed learning about through the years, just because of my own experience, plus some actual evidence that me and my mom have come across and whatnot here around Southern Oregon. But yeah, I'd love to help you get that stuff out there onto a YouTube channel or something. That'd be great. So when you made your report, did they ever say anything to you about?
No. Now I had a real good Native American friend that was in the same battery that I was in. Mm-hmm. And his last name, and this is no joke, his last name was called Holds the Enemy. Spelled as one word, Holds the Enemy. How he pronounced it, Holds the Enemy. And that was literally his last name. And in the military, you go by your last name.
Yeah.
Or your rank. And we go out, have a couple of beers or whatever. You get a little bit loose, your lips a little bit loose. And I'm not dumb. I knew that Native Americans had all kinds of legends about, forest spirits and everything else. So I told him. He was the only one I ever told the military about what happened when I was young hunting deer in Utah, and then what happened there on post. And he told me that they have always known that they're there for thousands of years, and that the Choctaw, he was Choctaw, and that the Choctaw, they've always known about it, but it's not something that's talked about. I mean, they're pretty, I'm sure pretty closed-mouthed about a lot of things. Mm-hmm. It's kept within their tribe. But he didn't even bat an eyelash when I told him about this, and he believed me 100%. Because to them, it's just part of life. It's no different than a deer or a coyote, mm-hmm. other than it's bigger.
So he shared some. You shared that information with him?
I did, and all he told me was that the tribe has always known about it, and that they passed down the knowledge of it for generations, grandfather to father to son, mm-hmm. and then once that son became the grandfather, and so on. And I kind of would sit there waiting for him to tell me something about it, but he wouldn't. And that's another thing I noticed about. I don't want to say it offensively or anything. The more traditional Native Americans, mm-hmm. They're kind of tight-lipped. They don't do a lot of talking. Where they use as few words as they need to.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, in today's kind of this whole PC world we're sitting in has been forced upon us. So don't be afraid to, even here with PacWest Bigfoot, if I offend anybody with what I say, too bad. I just don't care. I don't. I'm not PC. I'm not politically correct or anything.
I agree.
Tell you the truth, I think that a lot of the Native Americans are like that today. Still kind of, that kind of like, speak whenever you really need to speak. You know what I mean? It's like you don't have to be talking the whole time. And exactly. I think that's actually a good thing.
I do too.
I do. It's one of those things that even older generations always teach us, like, man, you talk a lot. It's like, yeah, I guess so. So no, I totally understand that. As a matter of fact, I have I have some friends here in the Pacific Northwest that are part of, they're Native Americans here. I also have some friends who are Nez Perce, things like that. Um, they're like that as well, except for they were a lot more open to speaking about the hairy man, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, which was kind of interesting growing up with those guys in school because they treated it too, and I'm totally in agreement with you. They treated it like it was just something else in the forest. It was a coyote or a bear, a deer, bird. I mean, it was just a pretty normal thing to them.
Yes.
I did
I
have
noticed they didn't hunt that though. You know what I mean? Like
no,
shooting
I noticed
deer or
that as
anything.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because I noticed they never talked about hunting that thing either. What they did talk about was, in a way, was kind of staying out of its way
Yes.
for the most part. You just kind of you want to avoid it as much as possible. If you see it or you think it's around, it's best just to clear out and go.
That's right. Live and
And
let live.
yeah, and I think a part of me basically believes that that's just because the thing is an animal. I mean, it's a predator. It's kind of like, okay, there's a grizzly bear or a mountain lion nearby. I think I need to go. I need to vacate the area.
Yep.
So, as far as I'm
You
concerned,
know, and they didn't even have, well, at one point, even the rifles of, the white man, the pale face yet.
uh-huh.
All they had was a bow and arrow to
Yeah, bow
defend
and arrows
themselves
or a
with.
spear or something like that. Or,
Knife, yes.
yeah, I mean, that's not a whole lot of protection, really. So,
No.
but, then again, I mean, the incidences of accidents or predation on them or something was probably far and few between because they were probably a whole lot smarter than we are today about being out there in the wild, um, you know so in the bush. So but anyways, gosh, that was interesting, man. Thanks. That was cool. For
Yeah,
the
I'll be happy to
first
answer,
interview here, it's been I really like this. I really enjoy it. So you are currently still in
I
Oklahoma?
do too. No, Utah.
Utah. Okay. Right on. And you say that you've been out there doing a little research from time to time?
Yes, for
Okay.
over 25 years.
Okay. All right. And so you've got some castings, you've got some
Pictures.
pictures. Oh, right on, right on. Yeah, I'd like to see a couple
Yeah,
of those pictures if you would, and we can
sure.
share them out there with everybody. I'd love to do that. Um,
Yeah, I even was kind of wise, tried to be wise about it, like the prints and stuff. I
mhm.
would put like dollar bill down on the ground, or my watch,
Yeah,
or my
if you could
comb.
send us a couple pictures of that, to scale with something there so we can see it to scale, that would be really awesome. I'd really like to share that on the Facebook page and
You bet.
here. So that would be great. I really, really would enjoy that. Um,
Yeah, and I can tell you, David, that I've been approached, being on the, I guess you call it, getting on YouTube and stuff and watching, trying to quietly follow other researchers and
mhm.
the trolls that are out there and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
I there's a few that I have really, really enjoyed and followed, but I didn't want to really mm, I guess a whole lot because of the ridicule, but at this point in my life, I reached the stage where I've amassed all this information and I don't care who believes it or not. I
Mhm.
really don't. I know what happened, and once seen, it can't be unseen. Once experienced, you can't unexperience. It's not
Yep.
pareidolia. It's not. I hunt. Yeah, I'm a veteran, and I know that was not any of the quote known species of animal out in
Mhm.
the forest, if you will.
Yeah.
And I'm just at that point where I don't care if one person out there, yeah, it helps one person and furthers the knowledge of it, then it was worth it. It's worth all the ridicule, anything.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean that's what I thought. Today it's like I am 45 years old now, and I am just past the whole idea of caring what people think, what I
That's
believe
right.
about the subject, and what like you said, you can't experience anything or unsee anything.
That's
I
right.
can't unexperience sound and the just whatever it was outside the tent that night. I can't unsee these big huge footprints that me and my mom had found while hunting out the perfect Christmas tree one year in the snow. You just can't do that. And so
Nope.
you know as far as I'm concerned, there's an apex ape-like predator out here roaming around, and I think there's a whole lot more than people let on. I believe there's probably a good number of them out here. I think
I do.
they
I
are.
do too.
Yeah, I think that for the most part, they will try to be unseen as well. And if they notice that their apex predator, and human beings are out there, I'm sure that, unless we're encroaching on some sort of, maybe their own offspring, their recent kills. I don't know. I think for the most part, they try to go around us as much as
I do
possible.
too.
Gorillas do that. All kinds of primates do that. Animals do that in general, kind of go around people. There's
Who
something
wants to
about
hang
us.
out with us? So we kill everything we see.
We kill everything in our way.
That's
So,
right. And oh yeah, David, they're absolutely masters of their environment,
oh
masters
yeah.
of camouflage. I mean, they adapted to their environment. We tried to adapt the environment to us.
Exactly, and that's how that works. I mean,
Yep.
you've seen experts out here in like Jane Goodall and all of them, and they've spoke about how they have kind of mastered their environment and being able to kind of blend in. I mean, you can walk by a giant ape today within just feet and not even know it's there in a jungle. I mean, could you imagine that same thing is happening today in the forests of North America? And people don't understand how thick
That's right.
the forest is here. I have friends that live down south and stuff, and like Arizona, Florida, and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, you guys think it's thick there, here and there, but you come up here, man, and it's like there's places you can't even walk into.
That man
Just
never had.
can't without a machete or something, because it's like an Amazon rainforest, except for just with coniferous trees. You know, So
That's right.
it's thick. It's thick. It's like you were saying there on in Utah, you've got places where it's a little, sparse and open, but then you've got
Hmm.
these places in there where it's just thick, low brush, tall treed forest that you could hardly walk through. So you can't see, I can't see 30 yards into a forest here on a given day.
Yeah. Same here.
It's too thick.
Oh, and the come summertime, you probably can't see 15 yards.
No, you can't. And especially when you're out there, say, when these things are moving around early mornings, right as the light starts to come up, or, in the evening as the sun's going down. I mean, it's just pitch black past, 5-10 feet into the brush. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
black.
what little light there is, you know very well, it can't get through the canopy.
When me and my mom found the tracks we did in the snow that morning, it must have been about 10 a.m., and the sun was up. It was still a cloudy day, but it was thinner clouds. Wasn't snowing. As a matter of fact, I think it was kind of mostly cloudy. There was, a breaking in the clouds here and there, so it wasn't all that bad. But that ridge of trees along that old logging road, we could not see past 10, 20 yards into it. It was about as far as we could see. After that, it was just a black wall of blackness.
That's right.
You know,
And that bit you can see, all you see is trunks of other trees.
that's all you're looking at. You're looking at brush and trunks of trees. So it's
That's right.
really not much. And the brush itself, I mean, anything could sit there and stand there or squat, and you would not know. You would
That's
not
what people
know.
don't get. You could hide a dinosaur in there and you couldn't see it.
As a matter of fact, it's things like Loch Ness and all that kind of stuff. People find me crazy for believing in that, but one of my heroes in the arena of science is actually a creationist, Ken Hammond. He believes that things like Loch Ness still exist, and that he's not far fetched from believing that something like a Bigfoot actually exists because
I
there's
think
evidence to it.
that's right. I
So
think that's a problem with that really puzzled me too, starting all this research and just seeing how abject science is to even wanting to take a look at any of this. And as I grew up and got taught, I thought that's what science was all about, was new discoveries. And if you were a scientist, that was the
science
thrill and
was like that
excitement.
for a long time, but then science became politicized. Once it
Absolutely.
became politicized, then all of a sudden we have crazy things like climate change and cold weather,
Global warming.
global warming, and then global cooling, then back to global. We have all these crazy things, and then you don't have a lot of serious science being done. And science is really, for me, more of the exploration. It's the journey.
Absolutely.
You
It's
know,
not the kill, it's the thrill of the chase.
it's the thrill of the chase. You're looking for these facts, you find these facts, you live, and then you believe those facts. I mean, truth is truth. And for me, I've seen tracks, I've experienced some pretty intense sounds and some pretty real craziness out here. And so for me, it just led me to believe that there's got to be something. There was no other tracks that day. It was just a set of big, huge footprints running alongside of a logging road in the snow. So you could make out toes, heel, everything. I mean, it was crazy.
Wow. Isn't that amazing too, that in a court of law, your testimony can be the difference between life or death for somebody. But your testimony, when it comes to a sighting or an encounter, you just get laughed at, and I'm told, "Oh, you're crazy."
Or just ignored in
Misidentification.
general. It's just like,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
just another story, or it's just another this. Well, they said that about the Billy ape for 100 years.
The panda. Nobody believed
Panda.
that existed. Yep, until Teddy Roosevelt's kids killed one and brought it out.
Yep. Exactly. So, the Billy ape found, what was that, late 90s, mid 90s, early
Yeah,
2000s, whatever it was. I mean, that thing had been talked about for 75 to 100 years, but nobody had ever seen one, and nobody believed it except for, that's right, the locals.
the indigenous people.
Indigenous local people from that area said, no, 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 they do exist. We see them here and there. And there it
Yeah,
was. You had this big, huge, twice, three times the size of a regular chimpanzee that actually walked around quite often on two legs.
that's right.
So
That's right.
interesting. So with that, I want to say thank you very much, Mark, for being on here, man. Greatly
My
appreciate
pleasure.
that. And I'm going to get this out to everybody, to you guys, as quickly as possible here. And if you want, Mark, could you email me a couple pictures of those, pictures of some of the casts that you have there, and put a little something. I'd love to see that and get that out there for everybody. It'd be
You
awesome.
bet. Yeah, give me a couple days to pull some
Yeah,
nice clear ones. I've even
sure.
got some really good shots of. I'm a vice president of a motorcycle club here, and behind our clubhouse,
Hmm.
it's right by Mount Timpanogos, where that's a
Hmm.
huge mountain here, second biggest in our state. Um, it's right by the mouth of the canyon, and there's this huge canal that comes from a small lake up at the top of the mountain. There's a glacier on the back of Mount
Hmm.
Timpanogos. So there's when as it melts, in the summer, and the snow comes off the peak. There's this huge lake, and they've added a gate since I was young and stuff, a floodgate, I guess you'd call it. And they'll
Hmm.
release it, and it'll come down. This canal is like probably 8 feet deep, and it's natural. It's not cement, and it goes through this whole city called Cedar Hills, and it runs right behind our clubhouse. And I've got some. I just got these pictures at the end of summer, right
Hmm.
in the mud. It had ran, and then they'll shut it off, and it'll stay muddy for I don't know 3-4 days before it gets hard packed and stuff from the sun. And I've got some awesome prints, fresh prints. in the
Oh,
mud.
awesome.
So, yeah.
That would be great, man. All right, buddy. So that is it. Thank you for being on here. And also, Mark, just you're a veteran, man. Thank you so very much. God bless you for your service, my friend. Awesome,
Thank you,
awesome,
David. I
awesome.
appreciate that.
Of course, man. So with that, guys, I will talk with you on the next live interview. We'll have another one next week. So with that, God bless, and get out there, get the evidence, find the evidence, share the evidence, and get back to us here. All right. Thanks.